Today, my goal is to talk through specifically, I think, some misconceptions we have in the AI market widely. But I'm not just going to talk about issues. We're going to talk about pathways to fix them and what some paradigm changes might look like. And in this world of AI models, there's new models every week. I remember starting when AlexNet was the top of the leaderboard. So that's how long I've been chasing AI and working on systems that could make our lives much better. And today, leaderboards change almost at a weekly clip. Fundamentally today, what we're seeing in the model space is we're seeing companies really build incredible foundational models, but these foundational models are extremely costly. They have incredible moments of magic, and you can't deny what these companies have built is truly special. But I think we're missing the outcomes. So I'm going to highlight specifically some of the metrics I think we're measuring and the comparisons to that. Today, I think what we're doing with AI at large is equivalent to a city planner if we were just looking at counting cars to build a city. So if we said, okay, we're going to design Singapore based on traffic. So let's say we have really bad traffic. That means we built our city really well. We have a lot of it. We have a lot of traffic. That's interesting. Or maybe we base city designs on outcomes we want to have for civilization. Maybe we want to design cities based on experience we want to fulfill. So a comparison here that I have a problem with is there's a lot of AI companies that are really building internet companies. That's not really interesting to me. And I think over time it won't be interesting to the market either. We're chasing users. Are users inherently valuable in AI? Obviously, we need consumption. We need ways for these models to live. But I really want us to think about this. Are users valuable? So in the internet era, users were really valuable because there was data we could extract from them. We could learn how to sell ads. We could learn how to design preference systems around users and their activity. But in AI, specifically, let's just talk chat, users aren't providing you answers. They're providing you questions. Questions are not the barrier of smarter AI systems. Answers are. The more users you have in the current model, the more money you lose. I know this not because of articles, but I know this because I work with enterprises all over the world that are trying to adopt large open models. So maybe they're trying to work with a foundational model provider, and they're finding right away, okay, this is great. It solves 60% of my problem. But then when I go to implement it, the more adoption I get, the more money I lose. So you could view a cost structure as inverted today. Prompting doesn't pay the bills for AI companies. We should be thinking about building AI systems that take away from interaction requirements. So chat is such a bad interface for AI because not only is it an old design metric, but it's a costly one. Because every prompt costs these companies money. Every inference costs us money. So there should be much more incentive to doing what a customer or a user wants before they ask. We should be thinking about how to build systems that are invisible rather than extractive, in the sense that a user has to extract today from an AI to get the answer. I don't know. I would assume most of you have engaged with like a ChatGPT or an Anthropic because we're at an event called SuperAI. But if you haven't, I think a very common pattern with LLMs at large is you'll ask questions, you have to interrogate, and oftentimes you have to continue to follow up. I don't know, even if the group before was talking about coding and how that's a great advent. I think the reason coding works is because developers are willing to tolerate error. If you were selling these code gen tools to business experts, they would be very disappointed because you ask it to build something and it's not going to build it. It will help a developer get it done, but it's not actually solving the problem. It's very iterative, a lot of labor, very labor intensive. And I'm hearing this from customers all over the world. It's so labor intensive, and the amount of mental bandwidth required to get the outcomes you need are quite significant. So what does that mean for the provider? If customers are asking more follow-ups and iterating, is that good for AI companies? No. It costs them a lot more money. And this is one symptom of a proof point that I think is important, that a lot of the foundational model companies are building businesses as if they're social media companies or internet companies. And there's an analogous story that I wasn't alive for, but I've read a lot about, and it's really interesting. Netscape, which if you don't know, was an early browser company, and it was founded by Mark Andreessen, who runs Andreessen Horowitz in California. And Netscape thought, if you look at their old interviews and like their mission statements, and a lot of that's been wiped from the internet because it didn't really age well, but they thought if you owned the browser, you owned the internet. So, okay, I own the browser, I solved the technical problem, I own the internet. There were other companies at a similar time building things like online bookstores that maybe ended up being more valuable than a browser. One of those companies, Amazon. Would you have rather owned stock in Amazon or Netscape? I mean, I would rather own stock in Amazon at that time than Netscape. There's a fundamental correlation here. Foundational model companies are saying, well, we're going to solve AGI, so therefore we win, because we have the best model and we win. Very similar to what Netscape said. I actually don't see that in the market at all. What I'm seeing in the market is enterprises need more than a general solution. All throughout history, generalization hasn't been viewed as a highly valued metric. So I don't know if you've ever heard the statement, he's an inch deep and a mile wide. When we hire people at webAI, I'm not looking to hear that description from one of our team members from HR. That's not going to excite me. That's probably a bad signal, because I'm looking to hire the best people in the world at a specific task. So why do we think that building intelligence isn't going to work that way? Why are we okay with this idea of general when historically general has never worked? In general intelligence, there's really no monolithic example of today. So I'm not saying that these models are bad. I'm just saying we fundamentally need them, but they're not the end-all, be-all. And I think a lot of people at this conference are talking about the things that wrap around them, but I want to push this even further, is the base model is not your product, and it's not a product. It's a gateway. So a lot of enterprises that are using foundation models today have to do a lot of work on the back half to make these perform. So they have to prepend prompts, they have to do guardrails, safety engines. They have to write code that makes these models perform as if it was a model designed for their use case, which is really interesting to me, because I actually think the most realistic outcome is that people will end up making models for their use case, because models are becoming so accessible. And it's becoming easier and easier to train these models for solutions. So what I see is more likely, and this is an infrastructure we're building and we believe in, and is that there's going to be an outcome that maps to civilization much more than some Terminator superintelligence living on a satellite or Stargate. What I think is going to happen is we're going to have hundreds of millions and billions of contextually deep models that operate like a civilization. Because that's what we do. So I got on a plane from London. I'm not based in London. I was there for work. And I took an Uber. Uber exists in London. And took an Uber and got to the airport, checked in, got on the plane. They brought me food. Went to get some sleep because it's a long flight from London to Singapore. We happened to land on time and got to my hotel. That's a really complex experience. It's not just complex in the sense of the intelligence required globally, but the contextual intelligence, the maintenance crew, the driver that knows the city, the team that's working on the plane, the flight crew that understands the safety protocols to keep the passenger safe, the pilots, the shift change, not to mention the digital technology living on the aircraft to get us there safely. All of these different forms of contextual intelligence working in harmony to solve a really complex problem. We're in this metal tube flying through the air, and we made it back safely. It's a very complex experience. And what you start to get with these contextual systems is you get these 10th percent gains that absolutely reshape industries. We're working with customers in some of the most interesting use cases that a general model would never solve. So he mentioned Aura. That's a great partner of ours. We're working on really interesting things that will be announced soon around bringing intelligence to the device. So what does it look like when every Aura Ring user has an AI that knows them well? Is ChatGPT or Anthropic going to train 2.5 million custom models for Aura users? Heck no. So how do we get there? Well, we have to change the architecture, we have to change the method, we have to change the way we deliver AI, and we have to figure out how to make these things very contextual. And then we see these gains that you would never get in the general. You see all of a sudden models that understand your personal behavior and habits, and you're actually willing to offer that information because it never goes to the cloud. It never leaves your space, it never leaves your phone. That's exciting for a lot of people because a lot of people don't like the idea of not getting to contribute to intelligence and not getting to own it and have a say in what happens with it. But when you do this, you start to be able to measure what actually moves the needle for these enterprises. So in my experience, what's moving the needle for enterprises is there's a big difference between handing someone a solution and then going from solution to a high-performing AI system. And the biggest gap there is a lot of these companies want to integrate their own data. And that's where all their value is. The last 10% is in their data. But to train a model with a foundational model company is very costly. It's a huge barrier. So these companies need new ways to take their crown jewel and integrate it into a system that's actually scalable. So if there's anything you could take away today is that the most valuable thing still is the data that you can't find online. Because these foundational models have trained on Reddit, all these interesting things. But do you want a model that trained on Reddit and open corpus to reassemble a Pratt & Whitney engine and then go hop on the plane? I don't. I'd rather have Pratt & Whitney work with a custom model provider and make it and actually deploy it, and we know that it's grounded and only been trained on knowledge that represents that engine. So we could talk about general intelligence, but general intelligence isn't actually very good. What we really are talking about when we say general intelligence is intelligence that surpasses civilization or acts like one. That's what we're building. So at webAI, we're building a civilization of intelligence. And I'm showing, I had to do this presentation in London, and somebody said something after the presentation. They said, "Why did you show a dead civilization? It would have made so much more sense if you would have just shown a great city." And I'm like, no, because civilizations die. We make mistakes all the time. I think we need to think as a civilization if we want our civilization to be massively successful. What's interesting about a civilization model is if we distribute these models to devices. So everyone in this room, webAI ships a model to your phone. We could do that today. We do that with enterprises all over the world. You have a custom model, it starts to learn you and act on your behalf, and it's owned by you. You can delete it. It's AI you can destroy. What if superintelligence was all of our models that could actually work together to solve the world's most complex problems? Well, I think we would start to be less concerned about 30% unemployment rates from AI because we would have a role in contributing to what that AI looks like in the future. Distributed intelligence is resilient in every fashion. So it's resilient from a national security perspective. I was in DC in the United States at a government event, and none of this is confidential. So what I can share is that Eric Schmidt, who invited me to the event to speak, was highlighting some fundamental things around risk of centralized data. And he said, well, what's going to happen is when you build a really smart system, either people are going to steal your model, which we believe is happening globally. If they don't steal your model, they'll find a way to farm your model to get information, that maybe they'll prompt engineer it and try to extract your training data. And at last resort, they might bomb your data center. This is a real conversation. Is this a risk? If we get to an era where we're making intelligent systems that are so great, what are people going to be willing to do to compromise their enemies? What are people going to be willing to do to stop competitors in the space, even on a business level? Distributing your intelligence is a resilient model. It means that if we all get to participate, we're making a future that's really meaningful. I think the most valuable AI companies will not be measured by their users, but they're going to be measured by their outcomes. We're working on a really interesting project in the medical space with preventative medicine. And I think there might be like 50 to 60 users globally by the time this is deployed. I think it's a $100 million a year run rate line. It's really interesting. Like, that's the opportunity. So when Facebook had 850 million monthly users, they were extremely profitable and they were generating a lot of revenue. Today, if you're an AI company of 850 million users, you're losing $5 billion a year. So I understand that we're excited about that, but I think we all just need to remember businesses have to operate with the potential to make money. XAI just announced that they're raising more money, and they're burning $13 billion this year, and they're doing about $500 million in revenue. If anybody wants to talk later, if you give me $1 billion, I will give you $100 million in revenue. I will do it tomorrow. So I think the most valuable AI will be the AI that we don't see. Those will be the companies that shape the next generation, and I think by 2030, AI will be a civilization operating system. And webAI is facilitating that. Thank you guys so much for your time.